The wind moved low across the ranch that evening, dragging long sighs through the tall grass and rattling the loose boards of Daniel Mercer's fence. The sun was sinking slow and red behind the hills, staining the sky like a warning no one had asked for. Daniel wiped sweat from his brow and leaned against the post. He'd just repaired when he felt it. Again, that quiet presence near the creek. She stood half-hidden beneath the cottonwoods, still as shadow, watching him. He had noticed her 3 days ago, thin and dust-covered, eyes sharp as flint. An Apache girl, no more than 20, carrying silence like armor. The first time he'd approached, she'd drawn a knife with steady hands. The second time, she hadn't needed to. Now, on the third evening, she didn't move at all as he walked toward the water, careful to keep his steps slow and visible. "You'll get colder when the sun drops," he said gently, stopping several feet away. "Nights bite harder than the days out here." She didn't answer. Her gaze stayed fixed on him, measuring, weighing. Up close, he could see how tired she was. Not just body tired, soul tired. A bruise darkened the edge of her wrist where her sleeve had slipped. Another shadow curved along her collarbone. Daniel's jaw tightened before he could stop himself. He crouched near the bank, keeping distance between them. "There's food by the fence post," he added. "Didn't want to startle you." For a moment something flickered in her eyes. Surprise, maybe. Or suspicion that kindness always came with a price. When she swayed slightly, just barely losing her balance, instinct pulled him forward. His hand reached out to steady her arm. She flinched hard, breath catching like she'd been struck. "Don't leave marks," she said. The words weren't loud. They were worse than that. Small, rehearsed, already wounded. Daniel froze, hand hovering in the air, before he slowly drew it back as if retreating from a fire. "I wasn't going to hurt you," he said quietly. "They all say that." Her voice held no anger, just certainty. The wind picked up, lifting strands of her dark hair across her face. Daniel stood there, feeling something unfamiliar settle heavy in his chest. Shame for men he didn't know. Anger for things he couldn't undo. "You don't have to trust me," he said after a long silence. "But no one here's laying a hand on you." She studied him like a cornered animal, deciding whether this cage was different from the last. For the first time in years, Daniel Mercer found himself hoping he could prove he wasn't like the others. The rain came without warning, a hard silver curtain sweeping across the plains and swallowing the ranch in minutes. Daniel had just latched the barn doors when thunder cracked overhead. His first thought wasn't for the livestock or the fencing. It was for her. He found Ayanna beneath a crooked mesquite near the creek, soaked through, arms wrapped around herself but refusing to crouch or beg the storm for mercy. Water streamed down her hair, darkening her skin. Yet she stood upright, as if surrender would cost her more than the cold ever could. "You'll freeze out here," Daniel called over the rain. Her eyes lifted to him, guarded even now. He didn't step too close. Cabin's warm. Fire's already going. Lightning split the sky behind him. For a second she looked impossibly young. Then the moment passed, and the walls went back up behind her eyes. Still she followed. Inside the cabin, the air smelled of wood smoke and dry cedar. Daniel moved slowly, setting another log on the fire, keeping his hands visible. Ayanna remained near the door, water pooling at her feet. Gaze scanning windows, corners, shadows. She mapped exits first, safety second. He grabbed a thick wool blanket from the chair and held it out without crossing the space between them. "Take it." After a pause, she stepped forward and reached for it. Their fingers brushed for the briefest second. Her whole body stiffened. "Don't leave marks," she whispered, the words escaping before she could swallow them back. Daniel felt the meaning land heavy and sharp. "No one's touching you unless you ask," he said quietly. She searched his face as if testing the weight of that promise. Most men would have laughed at such a sentence, or ignored it. He stepped back deliberately, giving her room. Minutes passed with only the crackle of fire between them. Slowly her shoulders lowered an inch. She wrapped the blanket tight, not for warmth alone, but like armor. "My name is Ayanna," she said at last. The sound of it filled the small cabin gently. "Daniel," he replied. Silence again, but softer now. She spoke in fragments after that soldier's smoke screams taken escaped. The words were flat, stripped of detail, but each one carried a history too heavy to unfold. He didn't press for more. Outside, hooves echoed faintly in the distance, nearly swallowed by the storm. Daniel's hand drifted toward the rifle resting near the hearth. He didn't make it obvious, didn't want to frighten her further, but something inside him had shifted. This wasn't charity. This was protection. And if anyone tried to drag her back into whatever darkness she'd fled, they would have to walk through him first. Dawn came pale and brittle, the kind of morning where sound carried too far. Ayana was awake before the light fully broke, seated near the window with her back straight, listening. Daniel noticed it too, the distant rhythm of hooves cutting through the quiet. 3 riders crested the ridge, silhouettes against the rising sun. Daniel stepped outside before they reached the yard, closing the cabin door gently behind him. He didn't look back, but he knew she would be watching through the thin slit in the curtain. The men rode in slow, confident circles, dust curling around their boots. Their uniforms were mismatched, half military, half lawless. The kind of men who wore authority like a costume. "Morning," one of them called, though there was no friendliness in it. "We're looking for someone." Daniel kept his voice even. "Ain't much out here but cattle and bad soil." Their smiles spread thin. "We heard different." Inside the cabin, Ayana's breathing slowed deliberately. She moved without panic, scanning the room, knife, back window, distance to the tree line. If she had to run, she would not hesitate. A rider swung down from his horse and started toward the porch. Daniel shifted, blocking the steps. "She's not here," he said firmly. The man's eyes sharpened. "She belongs with her people." Daniel didn't blink. "Then you best go find them." The tension snapped tight. The cabin door creaked open behind him. Ayana stepped out. Her chin lifted, though fear flickered in her eyes. "I belong nowhere you stand," she said quietly. The men laughed, but it wasn't amused, it was mocking, dismissive. One of them reached for her arm, as if claiming lost property. Daniel moved before thought could catch up. His hand struck the man's wrist aside, hard enough to make him stumble. In the same motion, the rifle came up, steady and unshaking. "You touch her," Daniel said, voice low as winter ground, "and you don't ride away." Silence swallowed the yard. The riders studied him, weighing pride against consequence. Killing a rancher was paperwork, questions, trouble. Not worth one girl who had already slipped their grasp once. They spat into the dirt instead. "This ain't finished," one muttered as they mounted again. Daniel didn't lower the rifle until they vanished beyond the ridge. When he finally turned, Ayana was staring at him differently now. Not like prey, not like someone cornered. "You froze," she said softly. He frowned. "When?" "When I told you not to leave marks. You stopped." Her voice trembled, but not from fear this time. "Others never stop." Daniel let the rifle rest against the porch rail. "You're not something to control," he said. "You choose where you stand." For the first time her shoulders eased, not because danger was gone, but because respect had taken its place. The weeks that followed felt almost unreal, like the land itself had decided to breathe easier. Ayana no longer kept to the shadows by the creek. She moved through the ranch with quiet purpose, learning the rhythm of it, the way fences sagged after windstorms, how the horses responded to tone more than tug, how mornings came soft and gold over the ridge. Daniel never crowded her. If anything, he was careful in a way that had become instinct now. When he handed her tools, he placed them within reach instead of pressing them into her palm. When they worked side by side, he let silence sit comfortably between them. Trust grew in the spaces where force used to live. One afternoon, a stubborn mare refused to cross a shallow stream. Daniel pulled gently at the reins, muttering under his breath. Ayana stepped forward, whispered something low and calm in her own language, and the horse obeyed her instantly. The look on Daniel's face, half surprise, half surrender, pulled a sudden laugh from her. It startled them both. The sound was bright, unguarded, and for a heartbeat the past seemed far away. But peace on the frontier was always borrowed. The riders returned under cover of night, this time with more men and torches that glowed like angry stars. The first flame caught the outer barn fast, dry wood surrendering with a roar. Smoke rolled thick across the yard. Daniel shoved open the cabin door. "Ayana, go." Back pasture, through the ridge trail. She stood firm. "I won't run again." Gunfire cracked through the dark. He gripped her shoulders, steady but never harsh. Even now, even in chaos, he was careful. "This isn't running," he said urgently. "This is choosing your life." For a split second, she searched his eyes. Then she moved, not away from him, but with purpose, circling wide to free the horses while he fired toward the men advancing through smoke. The fight was fast and brutal. Flames snapped and bullets tore splinters from wood. Daniel felt the burn in his side before he heard the shot. He staggered, but stayed standing, long enough for the attackers to lose their nerve and retreat into the dark they'd come from. When silence finally settled, it was heavy and broken by the crackle of dying fire. Daniel dropped to one knee. Ayana was beside him instantly, hands pressing against the blood seeping through his shirt. They trembled, but they did not hesitate. "Don't leave marks," she whispered. Tears slipping free, not from fear, but from the weight of caring. He managed a faint smile despite the pain, not planning on it. As dawn crept over the smoking ranch, she helped him stand, not as someone rescued, but as someone who had chosen and been chosen in return.